Who are you?
Kendrick Lamar.
Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar.
Kendrick Lamar.
Kendrick Lamar is a real motherfucking artist.
It's real unpredictable, period. You know, because you never know what type of mischief you're going to get yourself into.
Kendrick Lamar, the biggest name in music.
I am reincarnated. I was stargazing. Life goes on, honey.
Kendrick Lamar's rise from nothing to superstar is like completely insane. So, let's start at the very beginning, because you can't really understand Kendrick without understanding where he came from. So, picture this. You're in Compton, California. Not the version you see like in movies, with filters and cool soundtracks and everything. Like the actual real one. There's sirens at night, there's gunshots in the distance, tension in the air. Kendrick was born and raised like right in the middle of that. That wasn't a place where you could be careless. Every day you had to be alert. His parents had to move from Chicago trying to escape all the gang life, hoping Compton would be kind of safer, but it really wasn't. The streets were really rough, and Kendrick saw something no kid should ever see. Violence wasn't something he heard about, it was something happening around him. And here's the thing, Kendrick wasn't a loud kid. He was trying to be the toughest. He wasn't trying to be the toughest. He observed, he listened, he watched how people around him moved, talked, survived, and all that. But all of that went straight into his mind, and music slowly became his escape. Not really to brag, not to flex, but to make sense of what he was living through. Those early ages in Compton didn't just raise him. They shaped his voice, his message, and the kind of artist he really wants to become. Now here's something you need to understand, right? Kendrick Lamar didn't grow up with his parents who pushed the street life. No. It was actually the opposite. His parents had already seen what gangs and violence could do. They lived through it. They knew how fast the streets could destroy a future. So inside the house, there were rules, structure, values, even faith played a role. Not in a forced way, but in a kind of no right from wrong kind of way. And that really did matter, because when you step outside, hit the door into chaos every single day, having a home that feels grounded can actually save you. Kendrick's parents wanted him focused on school, staying respectful, staying alive. They didn't really make the streets glamorous, so to say. They warned him about it. Music always was around. West Coast legends, storytellers, voices that spoke about real life instead of fake fantasies. Kendrick listened closely, not just to beats, but to the lyrics, to the words, to their meaning. That mix, real life danger outside and guidance at home, created somewhat of a balance for him. It kept him from getting lost. It taught him discipline. And yeah, that's pretty much. When he started writing his own stories, those families' values showed up in every bar. And that foundation, that's really why Kendrick didn't fold when, a lot of pressure was put onto him. Now this is where things really started to get personal. Instead of running into the street life, Kendrick picked up a pen. And I don't mean writing to sound cool or to impress people, but he wrote to understand what was really going on around him. As a teenager, he filed notebooks and thoughts, stories and feelings that he couldn't really say out loud. Think about that for a second, right? While other kids were trying to fit or act tough, you know how kids are, Kendrick was trying to sit quiet, turning real life chaos into lyrics, into his words. He wrote about fear, about temptation, about watching friends make choices he knew could end badly. Rap wasn't just music, it was pretty much therapy. School actually played a huge role. Teachers noticed he had a gift with words. He wasn't just rhyming, he was actually painting pictures with words, lyrics, so to say. Every verse felt like a scene from a movie, and the more he wrote, the sharper he actually got. What made Kendrick different was his intention. He didn't want to lie in his raps, he wanted to tell the truth, even when it was uncomfortable to hear. But that honesty became so significant. Those notebooks he had, yeah, they were like to practice, training, preparation. Because without realizing it, Kendrick was building the voice that would later make the whole world listen to him. Now we're getting into the grind phase, and this part really shows you who Kendrick Lamar was, before the spotlight. Kendrick didn't blow up overnight. No viral moments like we see today. No shortcuts. He stayed releasing mixtapes under the name K-Dot. Just trying to make his voice heard about LA. Small shows, with small crowds, hand-to-hand respect. That was the level. And here's what really mattered. People around him noticed the difference. His lyrics weren't just about money or being tough, like I said earlier. They had meaning. Stories, they had depth. Other rappers could freestyle, but Kendrick could really tell a story. That earned him respect really fast, especially in a city that doesn't hand that out easily. He deserved it. As he grew, he made a decision that changed everything. He dropped the name K-Dot and started using his real name. That wasn't random. It was him saying, this is me, this is my life, and this is what I find true. When he released Section 80, it felt different. Honest, political, personal. He could talk about struggles, the system, self-reflection. The industry started paying attention, not because he was loud, but because he was real. That was the moment Kendrick stopped being just, local talent and started becoming a voice people really couldn't ignore. Now this is the moment where Kendrick Lamar didn't just make an album, he told his life story. When Good Kid, Mad City dropped, it felt like a movie you could hear. Every song was a scene, every verse had purpose. Kendrick wasn't really trying, so hard to make sound tough. He was explaining what it felt like to grow up surrounded by danger while trying to stay good. He talked about peer pressure, about being pulled towards the streets even when it's wrong, about fear, temptation, and survival. And the crazy parts, people who never stepped foot in Compton could still feel it, because it was human, honest, and pretty realistic. The album changed for him. Critics loved it. Fans connected deeply. It wasn't just good hip-hop, it was good music. And that was a first. Kendrick wasn't just respected, he was like the mainstream guy. But what really made this album so special was, like I said, his intention. He didn't glamorize violence, he showed consequences of your actions, he showed confusion, and he showed how to grow. That's what people realized. This wasn't just another rapper, but a storyteller. This is where Kendrick made a decision most artists are scared to make. After Good Kid, Mad City, he could have easily played it safe, bigger hooks, more radio hits, more money, more fame. The path was really wide open because that's what he said himself. But Kendrick didn't really take it. Instead, he went a completely opposite direction. To Pimp a Butterfly wasn't made to be comfortable. It was deep, heavy, emotional. It mixed jazz with funk, spoken word, truth. The album talked about race, identity, power, self-hate, success. All of these things were all in one. It forced people to think. And here's the key part. You could tell Kendrick felt responsibility, like, if I had this platform, I need to say something that matters. He wasn't rapping for charts anymore, he wasn't rapping for culture. It was more for history, for conversations that people usually avoid. Some listeners were confused at first. Others were blown away, but nobody really ignored it. The album turned Kendrick from a successful rapper into a cultural voice, someone whose words carried weight beyond music. And by choosing meaning over comfort, he proved something important. Real impact lasts longer than easy success. Let's be real. Fame isn't light, and for Kendrick Lamar, it came with a heavy weight. After the success of To Pimp a Butterfly, people didn't just see him as an artist anymore, nah. They saw him as a spokesperson, a leader, a voice for an entire community, and that's a lot to put on one person. Like, can you imagine the pressure? Kendrick felt that pressure. You could hear it in his music, the fear of saying the wrong thing, the responsibility of saying the right thing. He didn't want to be a superhero, he didn't want to pretend he had all the answers. That's why he stayed private. No constant flexing, no celebrity drama like all these other people we've been saying. No chasing attention. He kept his circle small and his life quiet. Not because he didn't care, but because he cared too much to play the games with his message. He understood something important. If he wasn't careful, fame could water down his actual truth. So instead of feeding the spotlight, he controlled it. The phase showed Kendrick wasn't just managing success, nah, he was protecting his purpose. And that mindset, that's what separates real artists from temporary. So look, this is where Kendrick Lamar surprised a lot of people. After dropping deep, heavy projects, some folks thought, okay, Kendrick's kinda good, but will he make music that really hits? And then he dropped Damn. This album was different. Not simpler, but more balanced. Kendrick found a way to keep his message and keep songs that people could play everywhere. In the car, at parties, on the radio. But if you listen closely, the depth was still there. He talked about pride, fear, loyalty, and God. Weakness with strength. All wrapped inside hard beats and sharp hooks. It proves something big. You don't have to dump yourself down to be successful. You can be smart and popular. Then came the recognition awards, massive sales, and something no rapper had done before, a Pulitzer Prize. That wasn't just a win for Kendrick, that was hip-hop being taken seriously as art. With Damn, Kendrick showed the world he could do it all. Message, music, impact, and still stay true to himself. Kendrick Lamar did something most superstars didn't know how to do. He actually stepped back. After Damn, the world expected more hits, more albums, more noise, but Kendrick went quiet. No constant interview, no social media overload, and that wasn't because he ran out of ideas, nah. It was because he needed to grow as a person. During that time, he looked inward. He started questioning himself, his ego, his mistakes, his trauma, and instead of hiding those thoughts, he eventually put them into music. And that's how Mobile and The Big Steppers was born. The album wasn't about flexing or being a hero, it was about accountability, therapy, admitting flaws. Kendrick talked about things artists would avoid, shame, insecurity, you get the idea. Some people weren't really ready for that honesty, but Kendrick didn't care. He was chasing applause. He wasn't chasing applause, he was chasing the truth, And now we start to see the impact of how deep it actually goes into music. Kendrick didn't just make albums, he made experience. He turned rap into storytelling, into reflection. He showed that hip-hop can be smart, emotional. He never chased trends, he never chased clout. While others were focused on numbers, he was focused on meaning. And because of that, his work lasts longer, it sticks. You could still hear his older songs and be like, wow, yeah, this actually hits. He also changed the way success looks. Because before it was just the money and fame, but now it's integrity. Future artists will study Kendrick not just for his lyrics, but his discipline, his patience, his courage to tell the truth, even when it wasn't popular. And that's his legacy. Not a rapper, not an artist, but a storyteller who made the world listen.